Hey all, it's Matt Harper here with the 212 degree team with Keller Williams Avenues, and we are live on my personal page. On the team page, we're a little bit narrow as the cell phone doesn't quite have as wide of a camera. Want to introduce a very, very special woman here on this Valentine's Day. This is the Brenna Harper. So my much better half, my wife Brenna, who is with the title company. She's with Land Title. And one of the great things that I love about the title company is what you guys are doing when it comes to data research. Yeah. So doing a lot of research into the data. What's the trends? What's happening in our Denver area market? Because truth be told, and though I wasn't in real estate at the time, a lot of people got caught off guard with the bubble that we went into just over a decade ago. Yeah. And keeping an eye on the data is really going to be beneficial for if that's going to continue. So, well, let's do this. For those that don't know, why don't you give us a little bit of background, tell us a little bit about you, in your history. You're also with the title company.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me. I have been with Land Title for just over 2 years, but I also was in real estate prior to that. So I was with Keller Williams with Matt for about 3 years before that, and then made the transition over to the title side. So that has been really fun for me to be able to use that knowledge that I had or have on the real estate side and better help my clients hopefully, and just understand kind of what's going on from more aspects. So that's been a really great transition here. As far as Land Title goes, Land Title's been around for over 50 years. We are the largest locally owned title company in Colorado. And we do about a third of all the transactions here in Colorado as far as getting your homes closed. So if you've sold a home, there's a pretty good chance that you at least hopefully know who Land Title is. So great company to be aligned with. I'm very blessed about that. So something that we're going to be sharing today is a market update that we do every month. So we have a relationship with RE Colorado, which is where a lot of the agents list their homes. So it's called the multiple listing service. So all of our data is pulled from there, and that's how we get that. And we do the 7 greater Denver metro counties. So it's not the entire state, but it's very relevant for what we're doing. And we put this whole report together and we give it to our agents and we talk about it so we can stay very up to date on what's going on. We also can do very localized searches, but we're going to focus on the greater overview today. Yeah. So some of this, if you're hearing and you're like, well, that's not really what my neighborhood sounds like, you're probably right, because real estate is nothing if not local, right? So that's a very important conversation to have with your agent when you're getting ready to buy or sell. But for the purpose of this conversation and kind of a bigger overview, we're going to stick at kind of a bird's eye view of what's happening in our metro area.
Yeah, so really a 30,000 foot view as to what's happening with the real estate market. And you've got the tools, we've got the tools. If you want to go down to the city level or even specific to your neighborhood, if you live in, River Run, you live in the Highlands, well, what is it happening specifically in that neighborhood versus, the whole 7 major Denver metro counties, right? We care more about the hyper local, what's happening on my street.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
Love the fact that Land Title is a local Colorado company. It's not a big franchise. They're specific here to Colorado. Yep. You guys have outside of Colorado?
Nope. Currently, we are just in Colorado, but we have over 50 locations. So we're local, but we're also big enough to, give great service and protect your biggest assets.
Yeah, well, given the fact that almost 1/3 of all the transactions, or around 1/3 of all the closed properties are closed with Land Title.
We're doing something right.
Enough bandwidth, enough power to be able to really accomplish and do what it is you need to do. Yep. With also having that local feel. So anyway, we're going to be talking about some specific data, and there's some slides that I will actually attach later to the Facebook thread. Tried to do a screen sharing. It didn't really want to cooperate with us. Thank you, technology. So anyway, let's talk about the highlights.
Yep.
Brenna, what's happening in our greater Denver metro area?
Yeah, so we are actually off to a pretty roaring start here for January. Our active inventory is down 9%, so 558 homes. So that means that compared to this time last year, so compared to January last year, we have 9% less homes, which obviously makes inventory tighter. There's less homes to look at. Detached single family is if we separate it out, detached and attached, detached is actually down 13%, and attached is pretty much flatline. It's about 0.2% up, actually. So that one we say is pretty much flat, and then obviously we're seeing that big difference in the detached market. So that would be your single family homes versus townhomes and condos.
And you and I were talking here just before we decided to go live as to what's kind of causing that. We're seeing a dramatic decrease in detached homes.
Yep.
A slight uptick in attached. And what was that kind of attributed to? There was something that really had happened in the market.
Yeah, so there was some builder defect laws that made it really difficult for builders to get those condos on the market, and those were resolved about a year ago. And so we saw a huge influx in active inventory. And so you'll see that from last January, that kind of time period, we saw all of a sudden all of these homes becoming available. So this is kind of balancing itself back out. But I know you wanted to speak a little bit on what those builder defect laws were.
Yeah, without getting too into the weeds with what the builder defect laws were, it made the landscape of building and selling condos very open to lawsuit, I guess is a good way to put it. So what they're calling is defects. Take that with kind of a grain of salt as to how severe those defects really were. So it became cost prohibitive for a lot of builders to actually build condos. What they were building instead were apartments and keeping those on the books. When that flipped, it became a lot more cost effective for builders to actually build and then sell condos, which is where we saw the big increase on the market.
Yep.
So a lot more homes, condos, attached homes, and that coming back onto the market, coming available, and that's been a big factor.
Yep. So we started strong this year. Our sold up about 9.8%. So that means, if we look at it, sold units, that means we probably had a stronger Q4 as well, which we did. So things are picking up. It's definitely a pretty strong seller's market there. But people are done with the holidays and we're off to the races in the real estate world. Yep.
Yeah, so we're seeing less inventory and more homes sold, which is actually creating more price increase.
Yep.
So what are we seeing with the average sold price?
So our average sold price is still going up. So detached single family is sitting right about that 517 for the Denver metro area, and then at attached single family we're at about 359. So year over year, so again January to January, that's about a 5.6% increase. Now that is a smaller increase than we've seen in years past. Because we saw some double-digit appreciation, but it's still above the national average, which is about at that 4%. And this is actually a good thing. So affordability, all of that, it's a good thing. So appreciation is still happening. It's just not happening at quite as rapid of a pace.
If appreciation is outpacing what's happening with your increase in salaries, that becomes a bigger issue, obviously. So over $515,000 for the average detached home. So that's gone up quite a bit over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And something, just to point out here, if you're hearing that number and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to buy a house, please keep in mind that that's the average. There are counties, there are neighborhoods where it's considerably lower. So that's something that you would definitely want to dive into with your agent when you're thinking about buying. I know Westminster versus Thornton, there's a big difference there. So this is, again, that big picture. So use it as information, don't let it scare you. And there's still a lot of great areas that have some really good homes, good value for their homes.
A lot of great homes available for, under $400,000. There's a lot of options under 300. There's getting pretty much non-existent under 200 anymore.
Yeah.
So the last on kind of the highlight reel, your average days on market.
Yep.
So what is the average days on market? Explain that to the rest of us.
So the average days on market, how we calculate that is from when your agent puts your listing into the multiple listing service, when it goes active, to when it goes under contract or pending. So typically that would be obviously when you get the contract, and then you have several more days, probably 30 to 45 until it closes or it's sold. So this is just until it goes under contract. So that's how that's calculated. And right now we are seeing that it's at about a 44.5 days on market as the average, which is up year over year, about 8.5%.
Yeah, so the average days on market going up. Now I know, anytime you're at a barbecue and people talk about how's the market, and you bring up a stat like the average days on market and say, well, the average days on market is 45 days. Most people don't believe you because they hear their neighbor sold it in 2 hours. The guy down the street sold it over the weekend. They may have had to have rushed when they bought a home over the last couple of years. So give us some context around that, because while it's a very important stat to know, we also don't want to be deceived around what that stat is.
Yeah, I think we have to go back on some level to our basic math of what exactly the average is. So that's if you take all the days on market, put them together, add them together, divide them by how many homes are there, and you get an average. So it's not the median, it's the average. So this is all of your multi-million-dollar listings. This is all of your homes that need a ton of love, or homes that people maybe were not accepting, they decided, I don't want to sell. They're pulling them off the market, so they never sold. So all of those things are taken into account with that average days on market. So I would say when I'm talking to agents, this is the one where they kind of are like, oh, really? That seems really high. And if you're just looking at it surface level, you're right. It does sound really high because we hear so many of those people selling in hours or days. So again, it kind of just depends on where you're at, what city, county you're in, what price point you're in. And this is everything that's being sold or not sold.
Well, and as a seller, also keep in mind that when you go out fishing, nobody tells you about the average size fish that they caught.
Yeah.
They tell you about the big one that they got away, right? Broke the line. It was so big. So keep in mind, if your neighbor's house sold in 2-3 weeks or 60 days, that's typically not the story that they're sharing and bragging about. So there's going to be some homes that sit on the market. There's going to be some homes that expire, right? The market rejected them. They said at that price, that home, there's no value for it. So nobody's interested in buying. So some are going to sell a lot faster. Some are going to sell a little bit longer. So as we take a look at another market snapshot around what's happening with active inventory, your under contract, and your sold. And again, we're going to have some of these slides up in the thread later so that they'll make a little bit more sense when you get a chance to actually take a look at them in person. But what is this one actually kind of telling us?
So this just tells us the relationship between active listings, under contract, and sold. So the closer that they get, so active listings are up here. So the closer that the under contracts get, especially to the active listing, the more crunched it gets or the more compressed it gets, that creates more demand because there's more buyers in the market. And if the inventory is coming down, or if there's just that many buyers coming in, that there's less homes for the buyers. So it becomes more competitive. As you see, sometimes in those later summer months, even into the fall, there's more space or there's decompression. The active listings, there's more homes on the market, there's less buyers there, so there's less homes going under contract, and you have a little bit more playing room. So, something that we were talking about earlier, and I think is a really important point, is active listings is kind of a lead indicator. Sold is a lag indicator. So you can't necessarily look at them at the same time, because if you say, oh, I see this data and the highest points for sold are in June, July, and August, well, you have to think about it. Most homes take about 30 to 45 days to sell. So when did they list their homes?
Yeah.
So that's been a big conversation that I know agents have all the time, is when is this big, the $1 million question, right? When is the best time to sell your home? And for a long time, we always thought it was summer. Kids are out of school, your grass is green, everything looks better, people are happier. At least I am. but
Brenna's
that's
not much for the winter
no.
time. She hates the snow.
Yeah, I guess I live in the wrong state. But, with that being said, yes, the most homes are closing in those summer months, but when are they being listed? We're seeing that it's actually more in the springtime. So some of that when you're talking to your clients, or when you're just considering buying or selling, if you're looking to get that top dollar, when the most buyers are in the market versus when, the demand is the highest, it's turning out to be the spring. But with that being said, our January is more active than it ever has been. So is that going to continue to move up? So that'll be something we have to watch and see. But just know that if you're looking at solds, know that you're looking about 30 to 45 days from when it was actually listed. And that is when you want to obviously put your home on the market, and you don't want to fall behind and kind of miss the boat on that.
Yeah, I think it tells us one part of the story, which is great. Early on in the spring, and this is moving earlier on every year, it seems like, as buyers get more active. Used to actually start when the Broncos were out of the playoffs, when they were done playing. The last couple of years, they've been done so early that it might as well start in December.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing there is it just is one part of the story, and how we shift our strategy based on those months is important. So if we're a buyer early on in the spring, well, we may have to be a little bit more aggressive and think outside the box. If we're a buyer looking in towards the end of summer, August, September, well, we might have a little bit more flexibility in just how we choose to attack the market. As a seller, it's important to keep in mind what's happening in that market. So we're looking at what's our pricing strategy, because if we're pricing in the summer and things have been busy and things have been good, and yet we're pricing as if the market's still like it is in the spring market, we're risking overpricing that home, and it's going to add to those average days on market.
Yep. So going back to your neighbor that sold in 3 days, it really does depend. If they sold 3 months ago and now you're selling, that's a different story. We're in a different market. So that's great for them. We're really excited, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be the same thing. It could be better, it could be worse, it could be the same. But even just a few months in this Denver market really do make a difference. So, talking to your agent on a monthly basis, keeping yourself up to date on what's going on, it really depends on what's going on right now as far as that pricing and how competitive you can be and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and when she says talking to your agent, specifically, she's talking about me.
I keep pointing to you.
Cool. So as we flip forward a couple of these slides and we take a look at active listings, I hear it often, Brenna. So is our business really seasonal? Is there a good time to list? Is there a bad time to list? What is the active inventory telling us around seasonality?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we put these up, when you'll be able to see them, you can see that our active inventory, as a lot of our numbers do, it is seasonal. It looks like waves. It goes up and down and up and down. And some years it goes up and not quite as down. And sometimes it goes a little bit more down. But that does fall in with that seasonality that we've been talking about. So it just, it depends on when people are putting stuff on the market and how quickly things are being sold as to how much active inventory. We are incredibly, incredibly low right now. We're at 4,600 homes combined, detached and attached. So under 5,000 is not very many.
No, 4,600 homes currently active. Now that's all the price points.
All the price points.
So, if you have, Jeff Bezos' budget, you could buy whatever you want. You have 4,600 options. If you're not, like, the rest of us, depending on your price point, that's going to depend on a lot fewer options.
Yep.
So with 4,600 homes over the last couple of years, it's fluctuated from where we're at today at 4,600. And where's it kind of fluctuated up to in the summer months?
So in the summer months, we got up to just over 8,000, which, sounds like a huge jump. It's almost 50% more. But when we look on it, and we'll kind of talk about this in a second, that is still under 2 months of active inventory. So even this summer, when we felt like a little bit of a breather and, people could take longer than 15 minutes to decide if they wanted a house or not, we're still in an extreme seller's market. Yeah. It's just less extreme than it has been before. So people think, okay, well, we were going 120, now we're going 80, so we might as well be walking. So it's all about perspective. So yes, our numbers low. Were they higher this summer? Absolutely. But comparatively and historically, we're still extremely, extremely low.
Yeah, I've heard, the joke, right? The two things get planted in the springtime, flowers and real estate signs, as everybody's looking to make that move. So that's absolutely having an effect to some degree as to what that inventory is. So you mentioned, and I might be jumping a little bit ahead of our plan here, but you mentioned about months supply, months of inventory.
Yep.
So what is the months of inventory? What does that mean?
Yeah, so if no more homes were to come on the market, that's how many months it would take before we ran out of homes with the buyers in the market.
So with 4,600 homes on the market, nothing new comes on, nobody else decides to sell their house, but there's still the same demand.
Yep, it would take less than 2 months.
Less than 2 months.
For the homes to be gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think, as a slide, you'll see we're right about a month for all of those homes to go away.
Yep. So the National Association of Realtors says that 6 months is a balanced market. From listening and talking to different professionals here in the Denver market specifically, as well as different economists, we are thinking it's closer to that 3 or 4 month mark for Colorado specifically. So again, if you're seeing these, I've seen Forbes articles, I've seen things on the news of different things like that about Oregon or New York, and that's great, but that's not our story. So it's really important. I mean, there can be indicators based on the coast and different things like that of the overall economy and real estate trends, but where we are right now in Colorado, it's closer to that 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, so, and I like around the 4 month. I think that's just my personal opinion for the balanced market. So some people may disagree. That's fine. It's just kind of my opinion as to where it's at for the Colorado market, about that 4 months to balance. And what we mean by balanced is that neither the seller or the buyer has a distinct advantage because buyers have a lot to choose from or a good amount to choose from. And there's a lot of buyers in the market. So it becomes a little bit simpler to kind of match those. So very cool. So as we move forward into supply of inventory, we talked about, and we're at right now with months supply. So
we are at for detached single family, we're at 0.91. So less than 1 month supply of inventory. Which is up a little bit from December, but year over year, we're down about 17%.
Yeah.
So yeah, people are getting out there earlier. Maybe it's because we had no snow in January, so people actually left their houses a little bit more. But
so we'll probably see an uptick in that with the snowy February that we've had.
Yeah, we'll see.
Just keeping having to shovel every day, it seems like. Cool. So again, we talked a little bit about days in the multiple listing service. Yep. So on that, one question that I had is, as we take a look at days on market, how long is it being marketed before it goes under contract? What are the numbers and what have we seen that change over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I think days on market is again seasonal. You'll see in most of these graphs, there's some kind of wave formation. So it doesn't usually spike like mountains. There's some seasonality to it, but we are going up year over year. So 2 years ago, it was 30, last year it was 39, this year we're at 45. So I think there's a couple different factors playing. First off, I think the agents are doing a really good job of educating their buyers. So there's two things with that. Buyers feel more educated or they actually are more educated. Thank you, internet. So there's some of that. They feel like they're more of the expert. They're not just willing to throw money at it and just pray that they get it. And not really think about anything else. But the other part of it is, like we talked about last summer, when we peaked all the way up to 2 months of inventory, buyers got a little bit more used to those options. And so I think on some level, they still want that, or they still feel like they should have those options. So with that, I think when we were at the peak of all of these flash sales, we had about 10% of everything going under contract dropping from buyer's remorse. So people go into this crazy bidding war. They go 20, 50 grand over. They, not going to do an inspection, don't care about the appraisal. And all of a sudden they wake up in the morning and decide maybe that wasn't a good idea. So that number has decreased significantly. But buyers are just being a little bit more choosy. So, it's just something that's kind of happening. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's anything to worry about. Because you're still seeing, again, average. This is the average. So a lot of homes are going quicker than that.
Yeah, the average days on market is always one of the indicators that I'm looking at to see what's happening with our market. I get this question asked all the time. Hey, is this a bubble? Is this going to burst? Are we at the peak? The answer is nobody really knows. I don't have a crystal ball yet. When the average days on market starts to creep up a little bit, that's one indication that things are balancing or shifting. And I think what's happening in our Denver market is that as the prices have increased, we're seeing the affordability has not kept pace, right? Yep. Or not the affordability, the salary raise, right? I mean, we weren't seeing double-digit percentage raises for everybody every year, which would have been nice to see.
Yeah.
Obviously, towards your pocketbook and your bank account. But when we take a look at homes a couple years ago, that would have been a $400,000 home. Now the value is a $500,000 home. There's fewer people that could afford that same home. So we're seeing those longer days on market, I think, is another indicator as to what's happening there. Anything else that the average days on market is telling us based on the data?
Do you have anything specific you're talking about?
Well, just curious if there was something that had jumped out, but.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I think, if you look at different counties, you can definitely see some variances there as well. Like looking here, Broomfield is at 28 days. Yeah. So that's considerably lower. So again, this is the bird's eye view, but you definitely want to get hyper local when you're looking for your home or to sell your home.
Yeah, the market's really done at the local neighborhood level, the real estate and how it's sold and how it's marketed and what that ends up meaning. So,
yep. All right.
Sold data, I think, is the next one that we're getting to. And sold data is always an interesting one. As you mentioned earlier, it's a lag indicator. So lag indicator meaning, lead indicator, these are things that are on the front end of it. Lag is we're measuring something that's already behind us, right? Or the difference between the windshield and the rearview mirror. So the sold data, so what are we looking at for sold units attached and detached?
So we are at just over 3,000 sold in January for attached and detached, which is up about 28% month over month and only about 9% year over year. And again, you can look at the graph and it is seasonal, but I think when you're looking at this data, again, like we talked about before, if you look at this, it's showing that April kind of peaked, but June, July, and August are really great months for sold. Well, you have to look 30 to 45 days ahead or behind, and that's when those were listed. So just having those conversations, I think it becomes very important again to have those pricing conversations. You're pricing it with where you're listing it, not where it's going to be sold.
Yeah, so if you're a seller, the listing part of it is still very, the pricing point of it is still very relevant.
Yep.
Buyers are not just paying whatever a seller's listing it for. And truth be told, even a couple of years ago when the market was seeing double-digit percentage appreciation, they weren't doing it then either. Homes were still expiring off the market. They were being rejected from the market. There are a number of factors. People are always going to be sensitive to price based on what else they've seen.
Yeah.
So.
I think we want to talk about average.
Yeah. So the average sold price.
Yeah.
We talked about the average detached now is over 515 at 517. Now that's gone up significantly and it feels that way. So where have the numbers kind of grown from?
So in 2012, we were right at about 275,000 for an average sold price in the detached world. Now we're at over 500,000. So we're at about that 517. So that's a significant increase.
Yeah, that's a massive increase in price, and that's almost 100% increase in value over the course of, really about 9 years.
Yeah. So I think some people ask, and you asked me this, like, when is the market going to peak out? Is this the peak? And that's again with the crystal ball. We don't know exactly. Is appreciation slowing down? Yes, we are back down into the single digits. Is it flatlining or stalling? That's not what we're seeing.
Yeah, and as we take a look at the attached, so we saw that big increase in detached. What happened with attached?
Attached had a very big increase as well. We went from about 150,000 to about 360,000 in that same time span. Yeah. So everything's getting more expensive.
Yeah, massive increase with attached. One of the big factors with attached was we had the two largest demographics in population, the baby boomers and the millennial generation, that were getting into or getting after about the same kind of property. So millennials, a lot of those that were buying were first-time home buyers, and they're looking for the townhomes and the condos because that's in their price point. That's what they could afford. And you had your baby boomers who had been in these big homes that they had moved up to as their kids got bigger and just didn't want the upkeep. As the kids had moved out of the house, they'd become empty nesters. So they wanted to travel a lot. They wanted to live a lifestyle that they enjoyed without having to do the maintenance on the big house. So really you had the two largest demographics all kind of looking for the same piece of property, and the builders not really building them, as we talked about earlier. So
well, and then you add in affordability to that. So people, as the market is starting to increase, maybe they can't get what they want where they want in the detached world, that you go into the attached world. So you have more people coming into the attached market. There's less homes there, and then the price skyrockets up. So a few different things at play in that one, but we definitely saw a large jump.
Yeah, massive increase there for attached properties into the values. Okay, so here's kind of the last slides that we wanted to talk on, is the percentage of list to sold price ratio. So when I'm talking to sellers, they believe that every home is going to sell for above listing price because that's what they heard. Again, remember that fishing story from their neighbor about the big fish that they caught. Well, we got, $10, $20, $30,000 over list price, and it's sold in 7 minutes. That's not what the data is actually telling us, is it?
Right. No. So first of all, I want to explain what this metric is. So what this means is from when it was listed, what the list price was, the last list price. So if they had to do price corrections, it's the last list price. So from list price to what they actually got from the sold price, we saw about a 98% of that sold list price. So just under full price. I think something to keep in mind is it was the last list price. So that doesn't mean that you can price it wherever you think your home is worth and still get that 98%. You may have had to come down 10, 15, 20, sometimes more to get to that price, to get people in the door, to then get that 98%. That's still a great average historically, but again, you have to look at it a little bit deeper than just that number and say pricing is still incredibly important. And pricing it correctly the first time makes all the difference in the world, and that's really when you're going to get the best, the highest and best.
Yeah, pricing is very, very critical. One common mistake that I hear a lot of sellers attempting to make is, well, we can always start high and then negotiate down. Unfortunately, what the data tells us happens is that the seller or the buyers in that market tend to be a little bit more hesitant to move forward. Then we end up chasing the market down to get to ultimately a price where we find the right buyer for it.
Yeah. And it goes back to that education of the buyers a little bit, I think, because if they see that home that's either done the price corrections or it's been on the market for a longer period of time, the buyers see that as an opportunity. So they know that maybe that seller is getting restless, and you're more likely to get lower offers or less contingencies. Mm-hmm. And now the buyers want X, Y, and Z for this price instead of just giving you flowers and praying that they accept your offer. So again, part of that education piece as well, but just on both sides, really.
Yeah, it's the data really tells a story, and I think that's the important piece to know is, and I'm a numbers guy. The numbers to me speak, right? They tell a story. They tell part of the story anyway. So whenever I'm looking at the information as to what makes sense, I'm going to go to the data because I want to see proof that what I believe is actually valid. Now, again, being in the industry, as long as I have as many transactions as we've been part of, know that not every home is going to sell above list price. But as a buyer, I think that's always reassuring to know. And I've had the opportunity to really kind of calm a lot of buyers in their nerve when they hear all of these stories about everybody having to pay so much over, and they're getting beat out by multiple offers, and they're getting beat out by cash. That's not really the story that the data is telling us, that there really is opportunity to find the right home and to not have to overpay for the property that you're getting.
Yeah. For me, when I'm buying things, I like to do reviews and I like to be informed. And I think that's something that a lot of people share with me. And this is great data to feel that to feel like you know what's going on and to really set expectations, because buying or selling a home is a huge, one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make in your life. It's extremely emotional. And a lot of times it's accompanied with a big life event. So this is a way to kind of take the emotion out of it a little bit and say, okay, what can I expect going in? So at least if there are those things coming up, okay, well, this is a really competitive market, or there's no homes coming up in my search. Okay, well, yeah, active inventory is really low. Yeah. So being able to set those expectations and just educate yourself a little bit about this process that not everyone does every day gives a lot of peace of mind and makes the overall experience more enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I was having this conversation with a client earlier today, actually, as what we're taking a look at for the homes available and where they want to be and the price point. There's really not very many options. Yeah. And we take a look at historically what's been happening over the last couple of years with the seasonality. When inventory starts to come up, what does that do? And kind of reassuring, hey, more homes are going to be coming on the market. Don't worry. And still be cognizant of what's happening with, that crunch phase, as you talked about with, there's not a whole lot of active inventory, but there's a whole lot of under contracts or buyers in the market. So, yeah. Well, one of the things that I know that I pride myself on is being the real estate economist. I want to study this industry and know it in and out so that when my clients have questions, right, we've got answers, or ultimately know where to go to get the answers. And I have a great resource in my own home, which has been awesome. Love Land Title for what it is that you do when it comes to putting this data together. So any final thoughts that you want to share as it relates to our market, what's happening, and kind of what we're going to be seeing moving forward?
I think just driving home the point that it's extremely local. So Arapahoe, Adams, Jefferson, those are all different stories. So, if you want to know what's going on in your neighborhood, your county, let us know. Let's have those conversations, and that it's always changing. So we're doing well. We're not in a bubble, none of that. We are slowing, but that's a good thing. So, Denver is still a great place to be, and people are still coming in hot every day. So, I think just not saying, okay, well, I looked at this one time, so now I know what's going on all the time. That It's just, it has to be constant, and that you're always kind of keeping on top of what's going on.
Well, what's really cool, and you've graciously agreed to do this with me on a monthly basis, is we're going to be taking a look at the stats on a monthly basis, come in with the Facebook Live video so that you can tune in and see, hey, what's happening in the market, not just somebody's opinion of it, but what's the data say? So
yeah, and with that, this is live. So if you guys have questions before we go live or afterward, we're happy to dive into that. So just let us know what you think, what you want to know about, and we'll get the answers for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, appreciate y'all tuning in, and check out next month as we're coming back with Brenna to do next month's market update. So thanks so much.
Happy Friday. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, y'all.